So Disney comes out and says we're cutting 7,000 jobs and slashing $5.5 billion in cost as it unveils vast restructuring. This is a CNBC story. Disney said Wednesday it's planning to reorganize into 3 segments. While also cutting thousands of jobs and slashing costs, the media and entertainment giant said it would now be made up of 3 divisions. Disney Entertainment, which includes most of its streaming and media operations, ESPN division, that includes the TV network and ESPN streaming services, Parks, Experiences, and Product Units. The only reason a person like Bob Iger would do that is because maybe he's planning on selling one of the 3. Who knows? That's the way you break it apart, because to say, well, we're now 3 different. So, hey, if you want to buy one of them, well, we're kind of for sale. Again, I'm not saying anything. I'm just speculating. On Wednesday, during its quarterly earnings call with investors, Disney also announced it would be cutting $5.5 billion in costs, which will be made up $3 billion from content, including sports, and remaining $2.5 billion from non-content cuts. Disney also said it would be eliminating 7,000 jobs from its workforce. That would be about 3% of roughly 220,000 people it employs. That's a lot of people. Tom, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, there's a couple things going on here. First of all, if any of you out there has got some walking around money, you got a couple $2 billion, and you ever wanted to own ESPN, that thing is for sale. It's been bleeding subscribers for literally a decade, and it's not getting any better. You've seen big money celebrity commentators have been not renewed. They've culled the herd, as they say. And then on the other side of it, I dove into this, and it turns out Hulu's doing okay. So Hulu is doing okay. They had some international markets on streaming not doing so well. But this is basically Iger coming back to turn this into a business. And they really overhired in a lot of areas. They had a lot of international things. And then he's looking at this ESPN thing saying, what do I do with this? Because right now, Hulu and Disney Plus are really covering for ESPN on the streaming side, because Disney's got a great portfolio, a great offering, and the problem is ESPN is dragging it, and then Parks are trying to make a comeback, and they've had all the controversy where we've heard about, we're going to raise the price in Parks so that way there'll be less people in line for everybody that finally goes to the parks. Remember that? They were doing that around December. Hey, any holiday travelers to go in? And then they've also got a, believe it or not, it's very real. What's going on in Florida with the tax change, that's real. When companies go, you'll read about companies opening factories in places, and they get a tax break from the state where they build the factory or something. Automakers have made a ton of money. Alabama gave money to Mercedes, and Tennessee gave money to Toyota. Please open your factories here, employ some workers, help our local economy. And ESPN has kind of poked the bear in Florida. So you're seeing Bob Iger do what the CEO of Disney needed to do, but he has the permission to do it because he's coming back with an expectation for change. This would have been much more difficult with an entrenched CEO suddenly saying, I'm going to do all this stuff.
So they bought what companies? Bob Iger's known. He was with
Pixar.
ABC, Disney for 38, 40 years, whatever the time. It's a great book. If you've never read the Ride of a Lifetime, sick book. We had all employers read it. It's a phenomenal book to read. The guy's a beast. Like, Bob Iger is a beast. Okay, he's the type of guy that could have ran for president. He may one day do it. He's that capable. He's a heavyweight. So he bought Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars. Wow. What else did they buy? ESPN.
A big Fox library.
Fox.
He owns Comcast $24 billion for the other part of Hulu.
So do you think the buying spree was a little too aggressive when money was cheap? Or do you think it was the right move to go doing what they did?
What years were that?
They're not in the same time. The timeline of when he bought all the different companies
It took
him years to buy Steve Jobs' company. It took him years to go through, So it was a lot of
relationship with him and Steve Jobs, very interesting.
It's a good relationship.
Yeah.
Because originally Jobs hated Disney, and then he was very upset at the way that Disney treated him, the guy that was before Bob Iger, and he says, I just didn't like the way he was treated. Then Bob came in and says, would you mind having a meeting? No. And then finally he was open to the idea. Then they had the conversation, and eventually when he sat down negotiating with Jobs, he kind of got the feel that he was ready, and then Jobs called him back, and then boom, a deal was struck. And by the way, when Jobs passed away, a lot of people thought his money was made from Apple. Yeah. He was the biggest shareholder of Disney, not Apple. He was the biggest shareholder in Disney, not Apple. So for him, it was a lot of his net worth was increasing because of Disney. But here's a question for you. You said something subtly, Tom. You said Florida taxes, Florida taxes, right? DeSantis vows to have Disney pay its fair share of taxes. There's a new sheriff in town. This is a Fox Tampa Bay story, right?
Oh, yes.
There's a new sheriff in town, declared Florida Governor Ron DeSantis during a press conference in Ocala. That's just the way it's going to be. DeSantis proposed a bill that would keep a special taxing district in place, but give it a new name and create 5-person board appointed by the governor. He insisted that this would allow for closer monitoring of the district without requiring taxpayers to take on Disney's financial obligations. They're not going to have their own government here. Wow, what a thing for Disney to say. Disney is going to pay its fair share of taxes, and Disney is going to honor the debt. However, Florida Democrats argue that the bill is a political maneuver by DeSantis and does not address Disney's special perks or closer corporate tax loopholes. DeSantis also argues that closer oversight will give the state a more accurate picture of Disney's land value and service efficiency. So this is a question for you, Tom, and then I'll open it up. You guys can banter. What's the likelihood that Bob Iger and DeSantis have had a private meeting already?
Oh, very likely.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay.
Sure.
And who's making the requests? Who's making the demands? There's a big difference between requests and demands. Who's making requests? Who's making demands?
I think Iger's making requests.
Yeah.
DeSantis is making demands.
I agree.
DeSantis is saying, you got to pay your property taxes, and I demand you do it. Iger is saying, hey, look, this goes way back to Disney building all these jobs and bringing all this tourism. Every time you pay a little tax on a hotel room in Florida because you went to Disney theme park, Disney doesn't get that. Florida gets that tax. So Iger's like, look at this economy that we've made, for you in Florida, giving you all this tax, people buying food and coming to visit Disney. We get the ticket to the theme park. You get the tax on food, lodging, car rental, all the things that they do. Come on, dude, please. So he's making the request, and DeSantis is saying, listen, I don't want this woke stuff. I'm going to tear this thing up, and you're going to pay your taxes. I demand it.
Who wins?
I think in the end, if you put this to the voters, if you put it only to the Florida voters, I don't think this is a winning argument for Disney.
But here's my question though. Him saying something like, less of the woke stuff. Do you think Ron and Florida is so big and powerful for that, like especially the tax thing, that Disney's going to change their entire woke agenda to try to, get into Florida? Because I just saw a cartoon that they put on Disney Plus. I don't know if you guys saw that. It was a really, really racial type of. Like, do you think that they'll change because of something like that?
This isn't about woke anymore.
It's past woke.
By the way, Biden is arguing and helping DeSantis every time he goes out. Tax the billionaires, make them pay their fair share. Those kind of voices coming from Washington actually help DeSantis, because the average voter in Florida says, hey, you're right. Maybe a long time ago Disney got a tax break, but why aren't they paying their fair share of property taxes and things today?
Yeah.
I'll kind of allow you to really elaborate on the tax stuff. Here's where I want to go with this, though. A wise man once told me, choose your enemies wisely. Okay?
It's a great title for a book.
I think it's a great title for a book, so be careful. Look out for that coming soon. And I think Ron is pretty calculated. And again, I'm not getting into the tax stuff. I'm talking more culture wars and choosing your enemy wisely. And Ron, when he won re-election, gave an entire speech. And like the mic drop moment was he says, Florida is where woke goes to die. And essentially, he knows exactly what he's doing. He's sort of using Disney as the poster boy or the whipping boy for the woke agenda, especially in Florida. And Ron said, okay, how can I pinpoint business, Florida, woke agenda? What company should I pinpoint? This is pre-Bob Iger. Bob Iger's been CEO again now, 3 months, 6 months max? Mm-hmm. And he said, this is where I want to pinpoint my agenda. This is exactly the type of company, exactly the type of woke agenda that I'm going to go after. And it's working for him. I just don't know if at some point this is going to backfire. I don't know. But for right now, it's definitely working for him.
Yeah, so DeSantis said back in November 30th, when him and Bob Iger had a feud, he said, we didn't drag them in. They went in on their own and not only opposed the bill, threatened to get it repealed. They brought this on themselves. I don't care what a Burbank, California-based company says about our laws.
Yep.
Here's the thing. Go ahead. You were going to say.
No, I was just going to say, I vividly remember, this is probably 2 years ago, you did an entire how-to on the difference between Florida Disney versus California Disney.
Big difference.
And everything that was happening in Florida and free state of Florida, DeSantis, and versus what was going on in California lockdown, Gavin Newsom. There were some stark differences.
But I'm going to tell you this. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Obviously, we all know who DeSantis is. You know, from the perspective of he's tough, he's strong, he's a leader. He's not going to compromise. You know, he comes across as an extremely valued-based guy. All of this stuff. He's the type of guy that if you're in war, he would be the guy that would be calling shots, leading. You visualize him as that leader. Mm-hmm. Doesn't fear. He'll stand up against anybody, right? But here's Bob Iger, from my POV of what Bob Iger's point of view. I see Bob Iger being the Kissinger personality that's willing to sit with anybody and negotiate, talking to enemies and getting the enemy to be calm, to speak with them in a reasonable manner without offending them. That's what I see Bob Iger, which means, to me, I think this would be pay-per-view type of conversations if it was public talk that you can see DeSantis and Iger having an hour, 2-hour meeting. I think it's great for television. You know, it'd be great television to see those two go at it because it's two different styles of getting things done. Mm-hmm. And they're both very, very effective. DeSantis is set with heavyweights, but Bob Iger is also set with some real heavyweights over the years. So one is free
business and political.
Exactly. You got the free market heavyweights. You got the other side, which is political heavyweights.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.